I found out my dad had a second family. At least that's what I thought. It started with a gas station receipt. Sounds stupid, right? But hear me out. I was 19 and home from college for the weekend. My dad had always been predictable. Same truck, same job, same routine. The kind of guy who ordered the same thing at the same diner every Friday night. Nothing about him was mysterious. Then, one Saturday morning, I borrowed his truck to pick up groceries. A receipt fell out from between the seats. Normally, I would have thrown it away, but something caught my eye. The gas station was almost 2 hours from where we lived. That made no sense. Dad hadn't traveled anywhere, at least not that I knew of. I tossed the receipt in my pocket and forgot about it until 2 weeks later. Another receipt. Same town, different date, then another and another, always the same place. Always on days when Dad claimed he was working overtime. At first, I tried to ignore it, but once your brain starts connecting dots, it's hard to stop. I told myself there was probably an explanation. Maybe a work project, maybe a client, maybe nothing. Then one night I asked him directly, "Dad, why are you always in Mason County?" For a split second, his face changed. Then it was gone. No reason. That answer made everything worse. No reason. Nobody drives 4 hours round trip for no reason. That's when the suspicion started. I didn't tell mom. I didn't tell my sister. I just kept watching. A month later, I followed him. I know, not my proudest moment. But by then, I was convinced something was going on. Dad left the house around 6 a.m. I waited 10 minutes and followed. 2 hours later, he pulled into a small neighborhood I'd never seen before. Not rich, not poor, just ordinary. He parked outside a small white house. Then he got out carrying grocery bags and walked inside. My stomach dropped. I sat there staring. Every terrible possibility hit me at once. Another wife, another kid, another life. For almost an hour, I stayed in that car. Then the front door opened. A little girl ran outside. Maybe 7 years old, my chest tightened. She threw her arms around my dad and he hugged her. I remember gripping the steering wheel so hard my hands hurt. Because in that moment, I was sure. I thought I'd figured it out. I drove home sick to my stomach. For 3 days, I barely slept. Every conversation with dad felt fake. Every family dinner felt fake. Finally, I snapped. One night after dinner, I slammed my hand on the table. "Who is she?" Everyone froze. Mom looked confused. Dad looked terrified. The little confidence I had vanished, but I kept going. The little girl, the house, the trips. Nobody spoke. Then Dad closed his eyes, like a man who had been carrying something heavy for a very long time. Mom stared at him. What is he talking about? For a second, I thought the world was ending. Then Dad said something I never expected. "Her name is Emma." Silence. "Who's Emma?" Mom asked. Dad swallowed hard. Then he answered, "My sister's daughter." I blinked. What? Dad's sister had died years earlier. At least that's what I remembered. But I hadn't known she left behind a child. Emma. Dad explained everything. After his sister passed away, Emma's father disappeared. Drugs, debt, eventually jail. The girl had nobody. Dad couldn't legally adopt her. There were family complications I still don't fully understand. But he could help. So every week, he drove there. Groceries, school supplies, doctor appointments, whatever she needed. I sat there trying to process everything. Then Mom asked the obvious question. "Why didn't you tell us?" Dad looked down, and his answer changed the entire story. Because we couldn't afford it. The room went quiet. Not dramatic movie quiet. Just real silence, the kind where nobody knows what to say. Dad explained that some months he was spending hundreds of dollars helping Emma. Money our family didn't really have. He was afraid we'd stop him. Or worse, that we'd feel like he was choosing her over us. The thing is, I understood why he helped. What I didn't understand was the lying. For months he'd hidden it. For months he'd let us wonder where he was. For months he'd carried it alone. The argument lasted hours. Nobody yelled much, which somehow made it harder. Because everyone had a point. Dad was helping a little girl who had nobody, but he was also keeping secrets from his own family. Both things were true. A week later, Dad asked if I wanted to meet Emma. Honestly, I didn't. Not at first. Part of me was embarrassed. Part of me was ashamed. And part of me was still angry. But eventually I went. Emma wasn't what I'd imagined. She wasn't some symbol. She wasn't a secret. She was just a kid who got excited about cartoons, a kid who loved pancakes, a kid who thought my dad hung the moon. And watching them together did something to me. Because I finally saw what he'd been protecting. Not a lie. A child. Today Emma is doing well. Dad still visits. Just not in secret anymore. But here's the part people argue about whenever I tell this story. Some say my dad did exactly the right thing. A little girl needed help. End of discussion. Others say he betrayed his own family by hiding it. That trust matters as much as good intentions. Honestly, I still don't know who's right. I just know this. The day I followed my dad, I was convinced I was about to uncover the worst thing he'd ever done. Instead, I discovered the best thing. And somehow, that still didn't make the lies hurt any less.